Well, hello again. So I don't usually make these videos very often unless it's something that I'm pretty passionate about. So obviously you can tell I'm pretty passionate about it. Mind the voice, suffering from a little bit of an upper respiratory infection, but we're getting through it. So the reason that I come to you today is for something that I have, due to an accident many moons ago, when I was doing less maintenance, but still trying to stay within the aviation community, however, physically was unable to, I started to learn a lot about logbooks, and I've gained a massive appreciation for them. It started out by doing pre-purchase inspections and doing a lot of logbook research in that aspect. And I started realizing how much you could tell about an aircraft just from that, right? So with that being said, I have kind of devoted some of my business to trying to educate and teach and get people more involved, owner-operators more involved within their logbooks. Because a logbook is the history of the airplane. And I know most of you are sitting at home going, of course, a logbook is the history of the airplane. It's all the things that have happened to it. Right, checks, we all know that. But what I think gets missed most often is the fact that, and I've hit on this on my previous video, that owner-operators are responsible for airworthiness, okay? Not me, not the maintenance shop that you're dealing with currently, and not any mechanic who's ever done your maintenance, okay? This is on you, owner-operator. You're the ones that are supposed to be managing, maintaining, and being involved with all aspects of maintenance. And by maintaining, I mean there are small items that the FAA has given you the go-ahead to do, which is listed out in the FARs. But by maintaining, I mostly mean paperwork, okay? Because the old adage is that if the paperwork doesn't outweigh the airplane, then the airplane's probably not airworthy. And it's mostly true. In my years of doing this, I've started noticing how true that really is. And so I want to kind of take a quick moment because it came up recently on like a memories through Facebook and Instagram about a very hellish week that I had with a Cessna 206 logbooks. And I'll show pictures of it later or reshare it. But my entire living room was paperwork, right? I was given a couple of like a black bag and a box and a few other things to try and figure out and put everything in chronological order and get it to where the airplane could be sold. Because as it turns out, owner-operators don't really care about logbooks until, money's on the table. And I don't mean that to be, a jerk or poke fun at you guys, but at the same time, a lot of you tend to not care until it's time to sell the airplane, and then all of a sudden we care, right? So let's just take a quick moment. This will probably end up being more of like a little series, but I think it's a good time to kind of bring it up and have this discussion. So I'm in process of a pre-buy, okay? I sat and had a discussion with the owner-operator. I met him, grabbed his logbooks. We talked about the airplane briefly, and I noticed a couple of things before starting the pre-buy. So just grabbing logbooks to do my logbook research, which is always the very first thing I do on a pre-buy. I don't want to look at the airplane. All I want to do is see the paperwork, because the paperwork is going to tell you a lot about how the airplane's been maintained. And what I mean by that is, let's say every year the annual entry says the same thing. I know we've seen this. Back in the day, we used to call it rubber stamping. There's the joke about $500 and a picture of it flying. And I think we all know, right? We may not talk about it. We may not want to dust off the little bit of dust that's collected on that. But once upon a time, it was called rubber stamping. And people actually did have rubber stamps that just said, I certify this airplane's been inspected in accordance with an annual inspection. I approve for return to service. And then sign it. But we don't do that anymore, right? Because we want to know what's going on. We want to know what's happening with our airplane. We don't want to just get that little stamp and then just roll the dice and try to figure out what happened, right? Or what got repaired or what got fixed. And then especially as parts have gone up and the labor rates have gone up, because I'm not unskilled labor. Okay. As labor rates have gone up, obviously people want to know where their money's going. So they want an itemized bill. They want a logbook entry that explains what's going on. With accident rates being higher and those sorts of things, everybody wants to know what's happening. So nowadays we don't rubber stamp. But what we do is copy and paste. Okay, so we've replaced rubber stamping with copy paste. So if you look at your logbooks and you start to see the same thing written over and over and over, I'd say that we've been doing a little rubber stamping, haven't we? Or, today's day and age, Control C, Control V, right? So, but with that being said, for someone who has been doing this for a while and has spent a little bit of time in the paperwork aspect, by the way, I love logbooks. I know that that's not a normal maintenance thing, but logbooks for me that's my jam, okay? I want the nastier, the better. I want somebody to bring me a black bag full of shit and let me just figure it out, okay? And I do this arm thing here because what you can't see is the logbooks that are but not bad. I mean, tame comparatively to the 206 I was doing this time 2 years ago. So, again, sorry. So point to the story being, what ends up happening and what I've ended up finding over the years is that as more and more things get given to an owner, if the maintenance shop is not really clear on where it needs to go, sometimes an owner operator just kind of tosses it in there, right? So you end up getting a stack of things, okay? Stack of things. And a lot of times you may end up with duplicates, okay? So like, let's say, for example, your vacuum pump gets replaced, okay? And vacuum pumps may not get replaced all the time, but they do get replaced fairly regularly. So now all of a sudden you got a stack this big of 8130s for vacuum pumps. Which one's currently installed? Do you know? Because sometimes you may order a vacuum pump from a shop or from somewhere that has that vacuum pump on, for sale. And the 8130 may be of a repair. Well, that repair may have been done in 2007, but you're buying it in 2010. So the 8130 may say 2007, but it was installed in 2010. Right? So at that point, what should be happening is someone should be going through, owner operators, should be going through and saying, my vacuum pump was replaced this year. Here's an 8130. I should probably throw the other 8130s away. And yes, you can do that because the part is no longer installed on the aircraft. Okay? So if the part has been superseded with a new part, then you take the old part 8130 out and you can just ball that up and throw it away because most likely it was replaced because the part failed. And when a part gets overhauled or repaired, most of the time they don't require the 8130 from when it was originally installed because they're going to put their own 8130 on it when they pull it apart and figure out what's wrong with it, right? Why did it fail? Now, in some cases, like a dry vacuum pump, for example, most of the time those aren't overhauled. They're not repaired. They're just kind of one of those throwaway items, but they can be repaired. But point being, when an item is superseded, the paperwork should be superseded. The logbook entry will stay to show a history of parts replaced. But that 8130 no longer matters because that physical part is no longer installed. Checks? Checks. So, with that being said, things just kind of get stuffed in logbooks, stuffed in logbooks, stuffed in logbooks until soon you get something that looks a little bit like this. And this is very tame because obviously I have been working on this for a little bit. So this is tame. This didn't start like this. But you get stacks of things. These are all 8130s. Okay, this is a stack of 8130s. And there's 8130s falling out of it. Now, I know where they all go. Some of them, because I've been working on this for a little bit. But some of these, you don't have a lot of information. Okay? So you kind of got to go back through and find them. But again, if the part has been superseded, the 8130 is no longer viable. It doesn't matter. You don't need to hang on to it anymore. The only time the 8130s, no, when the part's superseded, the 8130 no longer matters. Because a lot of times, like I said, part superseded, 8130 superseded. Cool. But that's only like 1/16 of the stuff that gets kept in logbooks, right? You've got 337s, you've got all of these things. And so if you just keep compiling, how do you know what's going on in your logbooks? You don't. You have no idea. And most owner operators don't know how to track a lot of the stuff that's in their logbooks, okay? So part of what I do with my little business is I take the logbooks, break them down to their simplest form, and then I rebuild them. And I make it where anyone, other maintenance shop, owner operator, anyone can go through these logbooks and figure out what they're looking for, okay? I try to break it down to its simplest form. Now, before somebody in the background, because I know there's an armchair quarterback out there somewhere, going, well, you need to do with all this stuff. Here's the thing. We don't throw anything away, okay? Throwing things away is up to the owner operator. So here's what I do. As I break things down into their simplest form, invoices, and ladies and gentlemen, listen to me all the way in the back, okay? Your invoices do not need to be with your logbooks. One more time, for those of you that are not listening, your invoices do not need to be in your logbooks. Pull them bad boys out. Put those things in chronological order and tuck those bitches far away from your logbooks. And here's why. Your invoices, let's see, I gotta see if I can find one because I've already been putting stuff away. You have invoices, you have leftover paperwork from like flap gap seals. Those types of items should be wrapped up and put away because, far away from your logbooks, because legally, if something happens to your logbooks, you can rebuild them from invoices, from stuff like this, because it gives you a paper trail of items that have been done to the airplane, okay? So if you lose your logbooks, or in the off chance that one of my brethren or sisters in the maintenance community loses your logbooks, or you fail to pay your bill, or I'm sure you've heard the horror stories. If your logbooks become missing, lost, and or otherwise damaged, you lose the value of the aircraft. It's true. Doesn't matter how many times you slice it, cut it, dice it, whatever you do, you lose the value of the aircraft. Now, if you have invoices that show that you paid, you have paperwork that has stamps on it from the people that make it. And the reason why I say this is because your 337, your authorized letter that says you can use the 337 or use the STC to make the 337, those items I always keep together and I put in the logbooks. But the other little piddly items that could end up taking up a lot of space, I try to put those off to the side because what we want to do, I don't know if you've noticed, but in aviation, everything is set up in redundancy, okay? So you have two magnetos, you have a voltage regulator, and you've got backup this, and you got that, and you got all of these things that are supposed to back up systems because we can't pull over in the sky, right? So then what I try to do is build a backup set, right? Because what you want to do, and I know somebody in the back is going to be like, well, we should just digitize. Digitize does not much for you. I mean, that's good. Sure, do it, backup plan. But how many people actually keep up with digitized logbooks? Not many, unless you're paying big dollars to a company who takes care of it. I'm talking about your mom and pop operations, your husbands and wives that are out there running their airplanes. I'm talking about normal average Joe people, not the people that usually have the money to spend to send to someone else to do this. This is the kind of stuff that, you know, you might want to maintain. I do it, obviously, I charge for it, but I do it so that you spend a one-time fee and then you can continue to maintain it, not me. And I teach you how to maintain it. That's one of the biggest things that Hangar Queen Aviation Services is all about, teaching. To make sure that you, owner-operator, are most informed, not being able to be taken advantage of. Stay focused, okay? All right, so when we talk about like 8130s and those sorts of things, you know, those superseded you get rid of if the part is replaced. But when it comes to 337s, and since I have the flap gap seals, I was going to try and find it, but let's see. There we are, flap gap seals. So, flap gap seals, yay. So when you do these, right, this has FAA approved, got a little stamp on it. That's super cool. Now, this is just because the paperwork has been approved. This is not saying it's approved for your airplane, but it does show that you have the paperwork. So what goes in the logbooks, 337, back of 337, STC, AML, and then on this particular one, this one doesn't have, some of them will have a little stamp in the corner that actually has your serial number and your tail number. Not all of them do. Some of them do. Depends upon the company. So, with that being said, I put that stuff together because those are the major hit point items that you would have taken and sent into the FAA. You wouldn't have sent the entire packet into the FAA. They're not going to take all 7,322 pages. So, I set the items that would have been sent to the FAA in the logbooks. All the extra stuff, the install manuals, because sometimes a lot of maintenance shops will make notes on the install manuals. Those are good notes. Keep those notes. Then I take those items, the install manuals and all that paperwork, and I set that off to the side. And then I send that back with the owner to be added with the invoices that will now be living somewhere other than your logbooks. Because what we want to do is we want to create a backup plan. So your logbooks have to go to the maintenance shop during the annual. Checks. So then what we want to do is we want to make it where you have a little binder that you take to the maintenance shop, to the maintenance shop, and you drop it off. And that goes with your airplane. That'll have your current logbooks. It'll have all that kind of jazz in it. Love. I also will do an updated AD sheet and then the old AD sheets. Do not throw those away. We save those. We keep those. And those go in as backup copies with all the stuff that goes back to the owner-operator. Again, you can rebuild logbooks if you have extra stuff, right? So we don't throw stuff away. We just separate it. Also because you will really get full. So this is from a 1982 airplane. This is 1982 to now paperwork. We don't want to stuff all of that in with the logbooks. Okay? Cool. So we want to bring it down to a manageable group that is easy to drop off with your airplane to annual. We want to be able to easily update it, and we want to be able to easily stay on top of it, right? And then we have our invoices. We have our old superseded 8130s that we've checked off to the side. Because again, if it's no longer installed and the part number no longer matches, it no longer matches, right? And then we take our old superseded AD sheets, we put those together. And then sometimes you'll notice that people will leave like old inspection reports and that sort of stuff. So we always keep that too. But again, we don't keep that in our main logbook binder. So the whole purpose of making this video was just to kind of bring to light things that get overlooked. This is a big one. Maintenance is maintenance. Logbooks are logbooks. They do correspond and overlap, but a lot of times logbooks kind of get overlooked and they become just a stuffing ground for stuff, right? For just paperwork and stuff. Like in this case, also, I ended up finding logbook entries that never got put in the logbooks. Now, the logbooks have been continued on, but those entries were never put in. And they're pretty big entries, right? Like in one case, it was a modification that was done that needed to be in the logbooks. But the shop didn't put it in. They handed it to the owner-operator. Here we go. We're back to you guys again, needing to be responsible for things. They gave it to the owner-operator back in 2007. It got stuffed in, but it never got added to the books. So I found it behind some old 8130s that are no longer viable because that engine's no longer installed. So this is why I say you really have to kind of dig in deep to this stuff. And you at least need to start by giving yourself a basis of groundwork. These airplanes are getting old, which means we've got a lot of years, which means we've got a lot of paperwork. Okay, yeah, this is probably going to turn into a series. We're already 20 minutes into this. So This is step one, part one. Okay, thanks, bye.